The massive alien ship hung in Earth's orbit like a dark cloud blocking out the stars. Its surface was rough and scaled, more like a living creature than a spacecraft. Inside the ship, the hunters watched Earth through their view screens, their sharp teeth gleaming as they studied the blue planet below. "Such soft creatures," growled Commander Rex, his clawed hand tapping against the metal control panel. "No natural armor, no claws, not even decent teeth. How did they ever survive to build cities?" The other hunters in the bridge growled in agreement, their thick scales shifting as they moved. The hunters had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They were the perfect predators, covered in nearly unbreakable scales, armed with razor-sharp claws and teeth that could tear through metal, and possessed of strength that could crush stone. Every species they had encountered either became their prey or bowed before them in fear. But now, they had orders from their High Council: study these humans before the invasion. Learn their weaknesses. The Council wanted to know how such fragile beings had managed to spread across their planet and build a civilization. Down on Earth, in the United Nations building in New York, the world's leaders gathered in emergency session. The alien ship had appeared 3 days ago, and all attempts at communication had failed. Military satellites showed it was larger than anything humans had ever built, nearly 10 miles long. "Our best weapons might not even scratch that thing," General Mike said, pointing at the satellite images. He was an older man with gray hair and worried eyes. "And if what our scans show is right, there could be thousands of them up there." But Dr. Anna, a scientist with short brown hair and determined eyes, stepped forward. "We may be physically weaker than them, but that's exactly why we survived on Earth. We had to become smarter. We had to work together. We had to build tools and plan ahead. Those aren't weaknesses, they're our strengths." While the leaders debated, the hunters launched their first test. Small pods dropped from their ship, each containing one of their warriors. They landed in remote areas: a forest in Canada, the Australian outback, the Siberian wilderness. The hunters wanted to test human reactions away from their cities. In the Canadian forest, a local ranger named Tom was the first to encounter them. He was checking trail cameras when he saw the alien, 8 feet tall, covered in dark scales, with claws like knives. Most people would have panicked. But Tom had spent 30 years in these woods. He'd faced bears, wolves, and mountain lions. He stayed calm. The hunter charged at him, expecting an easy kill. But Tom didn't try to fight it directly, that would have been suicide. Instead, he used his knowledge of the forest. He ran through dense brush where the larger alien got tangled. He crossed a half-frozen stream, knowing exactly which rocks were stable. The alien, unfamiliar with Earth's environment, slipped and fell. Tom reached his ranger station and grabbed what he needed: not guns, but tools. Ropes, nets, flares, and his radio. He called in what he'd seen, and within hours, a plan was forming. Similar scenes played out in other locations. The hunters were stronger, faster, and nearly impossible to hurt. But humans didn't survive by fighting fair. They set traps. They used the environment. They worked together. In Australia, Aboriginal trackers led teams that surrounded a hunter. In Siberia, local hunters used their knowledge of the harsh terrain to their advantage. Back on the alien ship, Commander Rex received the reports with growing unease. "Impossible," he snarled. 3 of our warriors, 3 of the galaxy's greatest predators, taken down by creatures we could crush with one hand? The humans had captured the aliens alive, using tactics the hunters had never encountered. Instead of trying to match strength with strength, humans used their environment, their tools, and most importantly, their ability to work together. What seemed like weakness to the hunters, the need to cooperate, to build tools, to plan ahead, was actually humanity's greatest strength. Dr. Anna led the team studying the captured hunter in Canada. They learned more in 2 days than the aliens had learned about humans in months of observation. The hunters' scales were nearly impenetrable, but they had poor heat regulation. Their strength was incredible, but their joints were stiff and inflexible. They could see perfectly in darkness, but bright lights confused them. They think we're prey, she explained to the UN Council. But that's their mistake. On Earth, some of the most successful species aren't the biggest or strongest. Look at wolves, individually weaker than their prey, but they succeed through teamwork. Look at humans, we're not the strongest, fastest, or toughest. But we're here, and all those stronger species aren't, because we learned to work together and use our minds. The hunters were used to species that either fought back directly and lost, or ran away and were hunted down. Humans did neither. Instead, they studied their enemy. They planned. They prepared. And most worryingly for the hunters, they showed no fear. Commander Rex watched as more scout pods were captured. Each time, the humans adapted their tactics, learning from each encounter. They didn't fight like prey species. They didn't even fight like predators. They fought like something the hunters had never encountered before, creatures who had turned their physical weaknesses into mental and social strengths. As the first day of contact drew to a close, Rex sent an urgent message to the High Council. For the first time in their history, the hunters faced an enemy they didn't understand. And in their experience, what you didn't understand was usually what killed you. The message was simple. The humans are not what we thought. They are not prey. They are not weak. And most importantly, they are not afraid. On Earth, as governments worldwide shared information and prepared defenses, Dr. Anna looked up at the alien ship through a telescope. They think we're fragile, she said to General Mike. Let's show them what humanity does best, turning disadvantages into strengths. The real battle hadn't even begun. But already, the galaxy's apex predators were learning a hard lesson: humans weren't fragile. They were adaptable. And sometimes, that was far more dangerous than any claw or fang. A week after first contact, the hunters launched their second test. This time, they targeted a small city in Brazil. 5 warrior pods crashed through the morning sky like falling stars, leaving trails of fire behind them. The city's name was Porto Seguro, and its people were ready. The first alien attacks had taught humanity valuable lessons, and they had spent every minute preparing. As sirens wailed through the streets, people didn't run in panic, they followed the plans they had practiced. Commander Rex watched through the ship's screens, expecting to see chaos. Instead, he saw order. Something is wrong, he growled to his officers. Prey species don't act like this. On the ground, Police Chief Marcus coordinated with military units that had arrived days ago. They had turned the city into a trap, though the aliens couldn't see it. Every street, every building, every corner had been prepared. The first hunter landed in the city square, its scales gleaming in the morning sun. It roared, expecting to cause terror. Instead, bright lights flashed from all directions, hundreds of mirrors and reflectors, carefully positioned to blind and confuse the alien's sensitive eyes. The hunter staggered, and that's when the first net caught it. Not metal chains that its strength could break, but special nets designed by Dr. Anna's team, lightweight but strong, coated with a sticky substance that stuck to the alien scales. The more it fought, the more tangled it became. 2 more hunters landed near the beach. They found themselves fighting in deep sand that human defenders had loosened, making their heavy bodies sink and struggle. The alien's strength meant nothing when they couldn't get solid footing. They're learning, Rex snarled, watching another warrior fall into a pit filled with quick-setting foam. They're adapting too fast. The 4th hunter tried to climb a tall building, using its claws to dig into the walls. But humans had studied the captured alien's weaknesses. High-pressure water cannons knocked it off balance. The hunter's scales were waterproof, but their grip wasn't. The fifth alien warrior was the smartest. It avoided the obvious traps, stuck to shadows, and picked off isolated targets. Or so it thought. But every person it chased led it exactly where the defenders wanted it to go. The hunter thought it was the predator, never realizing it was being hunted. In an underground command center, Marcus worked with Dr. Anna and General Mike via video link. The plan is working, Marcus reported. They're strong, but they think like solitary hunters. They don't expect coordinated resistance. Dr. Anna nodded. Their biology tells us everything. They evolved as apex predators. They never had to develop complex social strategies. Each one fights alone, that's their weakness. The fifth hunter learned this lesson too late. It chased what it thought was an easy target into a subway tunnel. But in the dark underground, it found itself surrounded. Not by soldiers with guns, those wouldn't work against its scales. Instead, it faced engineers with tools, construction workers with equipment, and city workers who knew every tunnel and passage. They didn't try to kill it. They didn't have to. Using their knowledge of the tunnel system, they forced it exactly where they wanted it to go. The hunter realized too late that the humans weren't running away, they were hurting it. The tunnel led to a prepared chamber. The alien found itself trapped in a space too small to move properly, its strength useless in the confined area. The humans sealed it inside with quick-drying cement, leaving only its head free. Up in orbit, Commander Rex received the final reports. All 5 warriors captured, without a single human death. The High Council would not be pleased. How? He demanded. How are they doing this? His science officer, who had been studying human history, spoke up. Sir, I found something interesting. These humans, they were never the strongest species on their planet. They lived alongside creatures much larger and stronger than themselves. Then how did they survive? They didn't just survive, sir. They became the dominant species. Not through strength, but through intelligence and cooperation. When they couldn't outfight something, they outthought it. When they weren't strong enough alone, they worked together. Rex looked down at Earth with new eyes. The humans weren't just defending, they were gathering data. Every encounter taught them more about the hunter's weaknesses. Every captured warrior was a source of information. In Porto Seguro, as teams worked to secure the captured aliens, Marcus received a call from Dr. Anna. We learned more from this attack than the last 3 combined, she said. Their coordination is poor, they don't adapt well to unexpected situations, and they rely too much on intimidation. They're used to being feared, Marcus replied. They don't know what to do when that doesn't work. The victory at Porto Seguro changed everything. Cities worldwide began implementing similar defense plans. The United Nations created a global network to share information and strategies. Humanity was doing what it had always done, learning, adapting, and preparing. That evening, as Rex prepared his report for the High Council, he remembered something he'd read in the humans' historical records. Long ago, when humans were still primitive, they had hunted creatures larger and stronger than themselves. They hadn't used claws or fangs, they had used their minds. They had studied their prey, learned its habits, and turned its strengths into weaknesses. Now, to his horror, Rex realized the truth: the hunters weren't studying humanity. Humanity was studying them. And for the first time in his life, the commander of the galaxy's most feared predators felt something new: fear. 2 weeks after the Porto Seguro victory, Dr. Anna stood in her underground lab, studying the captured hunter through reinforced glass. The alien was contained in a special chamber designed to hold its strength, but that wasn't what interested her. She watched as it struggled with a simple puzzle box placed in its enclosure. Fascinating, she muttered, taking notes. They have almost no problem-solving ability. The hunter had been trying to open the box for 3 hours. It had tried crushing it, clawing it, even biting it. Not once had it attempted to understand the simple latch mechanism. In another part of the lab, teams of scientists studied samples of the alien scales. General Mike watched from the observation deck above. "Tell me you found something useful," he said through the intercom. Dr. Anna smiled. "Better than useful. We found their evolutionary flaw." She pulled up images on the main screen. They showed microscopic views of the hunter's scales, bones, and tissue samples. "See this?" She pointed to strange patterns in their cellular structure. Their entire biology is built around being the perfect predator. But that specialization came at a cost. In orbit, Commander Rex faced his own problems. More scout missions had failed. Humans weren't just defending anymore, they were actively hunting his warriors. Worse, each captured hunter meant more data for the humans to study. "The Council demands answers," his second-in-command reported. "They want to know why the galaxy's apex predators can't handle a species that evolved without natural weapons." Rex slammed his clawed hand on the command console. "Because they don't fight like any species we've ever seen. They treat combat like a science experiment." He was right. In labs worldwide, humans shared their findings. The hunters' scales were nearly impenetrable, but their cells couldn't handle rapid temperature changes. Their strength was incredible, but their joints were vulnerable to certain sound frequencies. Their night vision was perfect, but their eyes couldn't process quickly changing light patterns. Dr. Anna's team made the biggest breakthrough. Their brains developed for hunting, not thinking, she explained to world leaders. They can track prey, fight, and kill better than anything we've ever seen. But they can't solve problems. They can't adapt quickly. They can't work together effectively. In Brazil, Marcus had turned Porto Seguro into a training center. Teams from other cities came to learn the successful defense tactics. "The aliens are stronger," he told them. "But strength isn't everything. We survived on Earth because we learned to outthink our predators." The hunters noticed these changes. Their warriors reported humans using new weapons, not guns or bombs, but devices that emitted specific frequencies that made their joints lock up. Traps that used rapid temperature changes to crack their scales. Light systems that confused their sensitive eyes. "They're not just learning about us," Rex realized with growing horror. "They're weaponizing their knowledge." Dr. Anna's next discovery proved even more important. The captured hunter in her lab had finally given up on the puzzle box. "Look at its brain scans," she told her team. "No frustration. No curiosity. No drive to understand. It simply stops when something doesn't yield to force." This matched what they'd learned from combat reports. The hunters were incredible fighters, but they had no backup plans. When brute force failed, they had no other strategies. They couldn't improvise or think creatively. Their evolution worked against them, Dr. Anna explained to General Mike. They were so successful as predators that they never needed to develop complex problem-solving skills. They never faced challenges they couldn't overcome with pure physical power, until now. Humanity's greatest strength was turning out to be its history of weakness. Humans had evolved as prey animals. They had survived by understanding their predators, by solving problems, by working together. Now they were using those same skills against the galaxy's greatest hunters. In orbit, Rex received news that changed everything. The humans weren't just defending Earth anymore. They had begun launching small, automated probes toward his ship. The probes didn't attack, they studied. They scanned. They learned. "Impossible," he growled. "They can't be planning to attack us. They're too weak." But his science officer understood the truth. "Sir, they're not planning to attack our warriors. They're studying our ship itself. Just like they studied our warriors." The officer was right. Dr. Anna's team had already identified several critical weaknesses in the Hunter's ship design. Like their bodies, the ships were built for power, not efficiency. They were nearly impenetrable but terrible at heat regulation. Incredibly strong but inflexible in their systems. They built their ships the same way they evolved, Dr. Anna told the UN Council. All offense, no adaptation. One system fails, they all fail. They never needed redundancy or backup systems because nothing ever challenged them, until now. As the third week of contact drew to a close, humanity had completely reversed the situation. The Hunters weren't studying a potential conquest anymore. They were facing a species that had turned their own strengths against them. In her lab, Dr. Anna watched the Hunter finally fall asleep, the puzzle box still unsolved. "They thought we were fragile," she said to her team. "But they never understood what made us strong. We didn't survive on Earth by being the strongest, we survived by being the smartest." Commander Rex, watching more probes approach his ship, finally understood too. The humans weren't prey trying to avoid being hunted. They were scientists conducting a study. And his mighty empire of predators had just become the test subjects. 1 month into the standoff, humanity changed the game. Instead of waiting for the Hunters to attack, Earth launched its first coordinated offensive. Not with warships or missiles, but with something the Hunters never expected: sound. Dr. Anna's team had discovered that specific sound frequencies disrupted the aliens' neural patterns. Their hearing evolved to detect prey, she explained to the military council. It made them vulnerable to certain sounds their prey species never produced. The plan was simple but clever. Thousands of small satellites, each carrying powerful speakers, launched toward the Hunter's ship. Commander Rex watched them approach, confused. "They're too small to damage our hull," he told his officers. "Ignore them." That was exactly what humanity counted on. The satellites surrounded the massive alien ship and activated. The sound they produced was too low for human ears, but to the Hunters, it was devastating. Inside the ship, warriors fell to their knees, their perfect predator bodies betrayed by their own specialized evolution. Their enhanced hearing, evolved to detect the slightest movement of prey, now worked against them. "Shut it off." Rex roared, but his crew couldn't function. The sound disrupted their coordination, confused their thoughts. The mighty Hunters were experiencing something new: helplessness. On Earth, Marcus watched the satellite feeds from Porto Seguro's command center. "It's working," he reported to General Mike. "Their ship's power systems are fluctuating. They can't maintain stable control." The Hunters had never developed protection against sonic attacks because they'd never needed it. No species had ever turned their own superior senses against them. But humans had studied them, understood them, and found their weakness. Dr. Anna monitored the aliens' reactions through data from the satellites. "Their ship's design is their weakness," she said. "Like their bodies, it's all offense, no defense. They never evolved to handle internal threats." The Hunter's massive ship began to drift, its crew unable to maintain proper control under the sonic assault. Rex fought through the disorienting effects to reach the communications console. For the first time in the history of his species, he sent a message of retreat. Humanity had done what no other species had managed in thousands of years. They had defeated the galaxy's apex predators not through superior strength or better weapons, but through understanding, adaptation, and the clever application of knowledge. In her lab, Dr. Anna looked at the puzzle box, still unsolved by the captured Hunter. "They thought being the perfect predator made them invincible," she said. "They never understood that imperfection, the need to adapt, to think, to work together, that's what made humans strong." 6 weeks after first contact, humans boarded the Hunter's massive ship. The boarding teams didn't carry traditional weapons. Instead, they wore special suits designed by Dr. Anna's team, equipped with sonic emitters and electromagnetic pulse generators. The hunters, still affected by the satellite array's frequencies, couldn't mount an effective defense. Their superior strength meant nothing when they could barely stand. Their perfect predator instincts were useless against an enemy they couldn't fight physically. Clear section by section, Marcus instructed the boarding teams from Earth. He'd been chosen to lead the operation because of his success in Porto Seguro. Remember, they're not thinking clearly. They'll react on instinct, use that against them. Inside the ship, the teams found something unexpected. The hunters' technology was advanced but simple. Like their minds, their equipment focused entirely on attack, with little thought for anything else. Their ship systems are like their brains, Dr. Anna observed through the team's video feeds. Powerful but inflexible. No backup systems, no redundancy. They never needed them before. Commander Rex, fighting through the effects of the sonic attack, watched humans methodically take control of his ship. They moved differently from any species he'd seen. Not like warriors, but like scientists conducting an experiment. They're recording everything, he realized. Learning our technology, our methods, our weaknesses. The human teams discovered vast chambers filled with trophies from conquered worlds. But unlike museums on Earth, there was no organization, no attempt to understand or preserve knowledge. The hunters had simply taken what they wanted, like animals hoarding prey. In the ship's data center, Dr. Anna's technical team made a breakthrough. Their computer systems are like their minds, she reported to General Mike. Incredibly powerful for hunting and fighting, but limited in other ways. No creativity, no ability to adapt their programming. The humans found something else, records of other species the hunters had conquered. Each followed the same pattern: the hunters arrived, the locals either fought and died or ran and were hunted down. We're the first to study them instead of just fighting them, Marcus noted as he led his team deeper into the ship. The first to turn their nature against them. In one chamber, they found proof of Dr. Anna's theories. The hunters had been so successful as predators that they'd stopped evolving mentally. Their technology advanced, but their thinking remained simple: find prey, chase prey, kill prey. Rex, now confined to the bridge with his command crew, watched the humans through security feeds. They moved with purpose, studying everything, adapting their tactics based on what they learned. They're so methodical, he said to his science officer. No species has ever treated us like this. Like we're specimens to be studied. The science officer, still fighting the effects of the sonic attack, managed to reply. Because we never gave them the chance. We always attacked immediately. These humans, they waited. They learned. They planned. In the ship's engineering section, Dr. Anna's team made another discovery. The hunter's faster-than-light drive was powerful but crude. Like everything else they built, it relied on brute force rather than efficiency. They never developed elegant solutions, she told General Mike over the comlink. They never had to. When you're strong enough to take what you want, you don't need to be clever. The human teams continued their systematic takeover of the ship, section by section. The hunters, their superior senses overwhelmed by precisely targeted frequencies, could only watch. Some tried to fight on instinct, but the humans had learned. They used sound, light, and electromagnetic pulses to confuse and disorient the aliens before they could attack. Marcus reached the ship's main armory and found it filled with weapons. But like everything else, they were simple, designed for direct attack, with no subtlety or versatility. Look at this, he told Dr. Anna through his camera feed. All their weapons are just bigger versions of their natural weapons. They never developed anything new. Never had to think differently. The final push to the bridge revealed the full extent of the hunters' limitations. Their ship's command systems were basic, designed for giving simple orders to warriors who operated alone. They had no real coordination, no complex strategy capabilities. Their entire civilization is built on being the strongest, Dr. Anna realized. They never developed the tools for dealing with species that think differently. Rex, watching humans enter his bridge, finally understood the truth. The hunters had spent thousands of years being the perfect predators. But they had never faced a species that refused to play the role of prey. "You don't fight like the others," he managed to say to Marcus as the human teams secured the bridge. "Because we're not fighting," Marcus replied. "We're solving a problem. That's what humans do. We study, we learn, we adapt." Dr. Anna's voice came through the comm system. "The hunters evolved to be perfect predators. But humans evolved to be perfect survivors. And sometimes, survival means becoming something your predators don't expect." The mighty hunter ship, Terror of 1,000 Worlds, was now under human control. Not through superior strength or better weapons, but through understanding, adaptation, and the application of knowledge. In her lab on Earth, Dr. Anna looked at the still unsolved puzzle box in the captured hunter's cage. "They thought being the strongest meant they would always win," she said to her team. "They never understood that strength without adaptability is just another kind of weakness." 2 months after capturing the hunter's ship, humanity sent a message to the High Council. But it wasn't a message of victory or triumph. It was a lesson. Dr. Anna stood before the captured hunters in her lab, recording her findings. "Your species evolved to be perfect predators," she explained, knowing the council would watch this. "But perfection can be a trap. When you're perfect at one thing, you stop growing in other ways." The recording showed the captured hunters still struggling with simple puzzles, still unable to adapt to new situations. Their mighty strength useless against problems that couldn't be solved with claws and fangs. Commander Rex, now held in a special containment facility, watched the recording with his officers. For the first time, they saw themselves through human eyes, not as mighty predators, but as creatures trapped by their own evolution. "Look at your ship's design," Dr. Anna continued in the recording, showing detailed scans. "All offense, no innovation. Your weapons, your tactics, your very thoughts, all following the same pattern you evolved with millions of years ago." Marcus added his own findings from studying the captured ship. "You built an empire on being the strongest," he said to the camera. "But strength without wisdom is just brute force. And brute force alone has never been enough to rule." The humans had learned to control the hunter's ship completely. They'd improved its systems, added redundancies, made it more efficient. They'd done in weeks what the hunters hadn't done in thousands of years, they'd innovated. "You thought we were fragile because we lacked natural weapons," General Mike explained in his segment of the message. "But that fragility forced us to become strong in other ways. We had to think, to plan, to work together. We had to understand our world, not just dominate it." The message included footage from Earth's history, showing how humans had survived despite being physically weaker than many species. It showed how they'd used tools, teamwork, and intelligence to overcome stronger opponents. "Your evolutionary path made you the perfect hunters," Dr. Anna continued. "Ours made us perfect survivors. You evolved to dominate. We evolved to adapt. And in the end, adaptation proved stronger than domination." The humans had studied the hunters' faster-than-light technology and already found ways to improve it. They'd examined the alien weapons and developed countermeasures. They'd taken everything the hunters had built and made it better. "We're sending this message not to humiliate you," Marcus explained, "but to teach you. Strength without growth leads to stagnation. Power without wisdom leads to weakness. You've ruled the galaxy through fear, but fear only works until someone stops being afraid." The message showed how humans had transformed the captured hunter ship. They'd added new systems, improved its efficiency, made it more adaptable. They'd done what the hunters had never thought to do, they'd made it better. "Your species stands at a crossroads," Dr. Anna said. "You can continue as you are, perfect but unchanging. Or you can learn what humans learned long ago, that true strength comes from adapting, from growing, from changing. Rex watched his mighty ship, now controlled by humans, perform maneuvers his crew had never imagined possible. The humans hadn't just taken their technology, they'd improved it. They'd done what the hunters had failed to do for thousands of years. "We're not your prey," General Mike stated firmly. "We're not your enemies either. We could be your teachers, if you're willing to learn. If you're willing to change." The message showed Earth cities, where captured hunters were learning new ways to think, new ways to behave. Some had started solving simple puzzles. Others had begun showing curiosity about things beyond hunting and fighting. "Your body evolved to be the perfect predator," Dr. Anna concluded. "But your mind can evolve to be something more. You can learn what humans learned, that being perfect at one thing means nothing if you can't adapt when that one thing isn't enough." The message ended with an offer, not of surrender, not of alliance, but of education. Humanity offered to teach the hunters what they'd never learned in their millions of years of evolution, how to think beyond their instincts. "You called us fragile," Marcus's voice concluded the message. "But fragility taught us to be strong in ways you never imagined. Now you must choose, continue being perfect predators, or learn to be something more." As the High Council watched the message, they faced a choice their species had never faced before. For the first time in their history, being the strongest wasn't enough. They had to decide whether to remain unchanged and perfect, or to learn and grow. In her lab, Dr. Anna watched the captured hunter finally solve the puzzle box. It had taken 2 months, but it had learned. "That's the real difference between us," she told her team. "Not strength or weakness, but the ability to change." 3 months after Earth sent its message, the High Council made their decision. Their response came not in words, but in actions. The hunter ships across the galaxy began standing down. Not surrendering, but changing. Dr. Anna received the first group of hunter scientists in her lab. They moved differently from the warriors, less aggressive, more curious. They had been chosen because they showed the first signs of breaking free from their species' mental limitations. "Your message showed us something we never saw before," one of them told her. "We thought being perfect predators made us unstoppable. We never realized it also made us unchangeable." Commander Rex, now working with Marcus to teach hunter warriors new ways of thinking, watched his people begin to change. "We spent millions of years becoming the perfect hunters," he said. "But humans spent millions of years becoming perfect learners." The transformation wasn't easy. Generations of evolution had shaped the hunters' minds for one purpose only. But humans had discovered something remarkable: their brains could change, could form new patterns, could learn to think in different ways. "Your species isn't trapped by its evolution," Dr. Anna explained to a group of hunter leaders. "Your bodies may be perfectly adapted for hunting, but your minds can adapt to anything, if you let them." The hunter ship that had once threatened Earth became a school. Humans taught the aliens things they'd never considered: problem-solving, creativity, cooperation. Skills that had once seemed useless to a species that could take whatever it wanted by force. "Look at this," Marcus told General Mike, showing him footage of hunter warriors working together to solve complex problems. 3 months ago, they couldn't think beyond attack and kill. Now they're learning to plan, to cooperate, to think differently. The High Council itself underwent changes. They added new roles beyond War Chief and Hunt Master. They created positions for thinkers, planners, builders, roles that would have seemed pointless to them before. "You've started an evolutionary revolution," Dr. Anna told Rex as they watched young hunters playing with puzzle toys. "Not of bodies, but of minds. You're becoming something new, something that combines the strength of predators with the adaptability of humans." The galaxy noticed the change. Species that had lived in fear of the hunters for generations watched in amazement as the mighty predators learned to be something more than just hunters. Some even began to work with them, teaching and learning together. "We thought our perfection was our strength," Rex said during a UN Council meeting. "We never realized it was also our prison. Humans showed us that true strength isn't in being perfect, it's in being able to change." The puzzle box that had taken the first captured hunter 2 months to solve became a symbol. New hunters could now solve it in hours, not through greater strength, but through better thinking. They had learned what humans had known all along, that brains could be more powerful than brute force. "Your species hasn't lost its strength," Dr. Anna assured a group of worried hunter parents. "You've gained something more valuable, the ability to choose when to use that strength, and when to use other skills instead." A year after first contact, the hunters had changed more than they had in millions of years of evolution. They still had their powerful bodies, their perfect predator instincts. But now they had something more, the ability to think beyond those instincts. "We called humans fragile," Rex told his warriors during their graduation from the new training program. "But they taught us that true strength isn't in being unbreakable, it's in being able to bend, to change, to grow." The final proof of change came when the High Council announced its new mission. The hunters would no longer be the galaxy's predators. Instead, they would become its protectors, using their strength not to dominate, but to defend. "You've given us something we never knew we needed," the Council's message to Earth said. "You've taught us that being the perfect predator means nothing if you're perfectly wrong about what really matters." Dr. Anna, watching the message with her team, smiled at the puzzle box on her desk. "They thought we were fragile because we weren't perfect," she said. "They never understood that imperfection was what made us strong. Because when you're not perfect, you never stop trying to be better." The story of humanity and the hunters became a legend in the galaxy. Not a story of war or conquest, but of evolution, not of bodies, but of minds. It taught that true strength isn't in being the perfect predator, but in being perfectly willing to change. And in the end, the species that had evolved to be the galaxy's greatest predators learned the greatest lesson of all, that sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is admit you have something to learn from those you thought were weak.